Hello, 5th grade. Today on lesson 114 we're using formulas. We will use formulas to solve perimeter, area, and volume problems. We will also choose the appropriate formula to solve a problem. We've already discussed quite a few formulas, but before we read the lesson, I'm just going to refresh our memory on those formulas. The formula for area we've dealt with very often. We know that that's length times width. We always get an answer with a square amount of units, or units squared. Okay, we know the volume is length times width times depth, and sometimes we might see length times height times depth. But again, as long as you're multiplying the base, the side, and then the deepness of an object, you can figure out the volume of a rectangular solid. And finally, I guess a formula we haven't used a ton, because usually we just add up the distance around. We'd add up all of the outside edges of a two-dimensional object. But the formula for perimeter, you take and you multiply the width times 2 and the length times 2, and you add them together. Which makes sense if we think about it. Let's say that this is 3 and this is 2 units long. If we multiply the length times 2, it covers both the top and the bottom. And then if we multiply the width times 2, it takes care of both sides. So 3 times 2 is 6. I shouldn't have done that. Okay, so 3 times 2, the 2 times the length is 6. If we add that to the width of 2 times 2, we get 4. Our perimeter is just units. Remember, if it's centimeters, inches, feet, miles, you don't square it. Okay, so units. And then getting back to volume, remember that volume is units cubed. They're typically three-dimensional objects, so they'll be units cubed. Okay, the new concept on page 748. It says formulas describe processes for solving certain types of problems. Formulas often use letters and other symbols to show the relationships between various measures. The letters, L and W, of course, and A, represent area equals length times width. That's the formula for it. And we know what these letters all mean because we've seen them and we've practiced them often. In the examples below on page 749, it says, we use formulas to solve problems about perimeter, area, and volume. The Jacksons have added a dining room to a corner of their house. Jackson purchased crown molding that will be installed at the intersection of the walls and the ceiling of his dining room. Molding costs $5 per foot to install. What will Mr. Jackson's cost for having the crown molding be installed? Okay, so they show a three-dimensional object, and I'll do my best to draw that three-dimensional object. Okay, I think I got all the walls. But basically the only thing that we need to deal with is the crown molding, which goes along the ceiling of their room that they're taking care of. So the formula we need to use is the perimeter of this, the perimeter of the ceiling, the outside, because the crown molding, of course, goes around the top of a ceiling, where the ceiling kind of meets the wall. Okay, so they told us that it was 15 feet wide, it was 10 feet tall, and it was 12 feet deep. Okay, because this is a rectangular solid, not a well-drawn rectangular solid, but because it's a rectangular solid, we know that this length and this length and this length and then this length back here, those are all equal. Okay, so we know that this is 12, this is 12, and this is 15 on the opposite side of this 15. So we're going to use the perimeter formula. The formula for perimeter, again, is perimeter equals 2 times width plus 2 times length. Remembering that when we put a letter directly beside a number, we're multiplying those together. Okay, so now let's plug in our numbers. Perimeter equals 2 times 12, because 12 is the width. We're adding that to 2 times the length of 15. Okay, 2 times 12 is 24. We add that to 2 times 15, because remember we multiply before we add. 2 times 15 is 30. Okay, and I know that 4 plus 0 is 4. 2 plus 3 is 5. So our perimeter of our room, or the perimeter of the ceiling, I guess, is 54 feet. Now they do ask us, by the way, this is example number 1. This is your first answer, 54 feet. We need 54 feet of crown molding, and crown molding costs $5 a foot. Okay, so we're going to multiply 54 feet, because we need 54 feet of this crown molding, and we're going to multiply it by $5 a foot. 5 times 4 is 20. 5 times 5 is 25, plus 2 is 27. Okay, so you end up having 2 answers for example number 1. Again, first answer was 54 feet. We found the perimeter. We made sure that we used the formula for perimeter, and then we multiplied 54 feet by 5 to get $270 worth of crown molding. Okay, example 2. Again, we need to choose the appropriate formula to answer this question. Again, they show a room in 3-dimensional. They show it as a 3-dimensional shape. Mr. Jackson wants to buy carpet for the dining room floor. How many square feet of carpet are needed to cover the floor? Okay, again, I heard square feet and I heard carpet. I understand that that represents an area. It's not taking up a bunch of space. It's not volume. It's not just the distance around the room. It's the actual floor, covering the entire floor. So we do need to deal with area. So I'm going to write down the formula for area. Area equals length times width. And we're going to figure out how much carpet he needs. I guess the floor, it's the same room here, okay? And because, again, this is 12 here, this one's 15. To find area, we take the length of the room, we multiply it by the width of the room, because the carpet will go on the floor of this room, okay? So let's plug in our information. Area equals length, 15, times width, 12. Now because it's a lot easier to multiply these numbers vertically, I'm going to draw it off to the side. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. Bring my 0 down so I can multiply the tens place. 1 times 5 is 5. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, now I add it. 0, 8, 1. What is the area of my room? 180 feet squared. Again, remembering my exponent of 2. Okay, let's see if it asked us how much it would cost. It does say at the bottom, analysis, the carpet Mrs. Jackson chose costs $5 per square foot. How much will the carpet cost? My carpet was a lot cheaper than that. But if we have $180 feet squared of carpet, we need to multiply that by $5 a square foot, and we'll get our answer of how much money she spent on this carpet. 5 times 8 is 40. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 4 is 9. So the second answer, first answer to example 2, second answer to example 2 is $900. Alright, and the third one, I assume we're going to use the volume formula. It does say to heat and cool the room, the Jacksons need to know the volume of the room. How many additional cubic feet of air need to be heated or cooled? So we're going to first write down the formula for volume. Volume equals length times width times depth. And we need to figure out how much air is in the room, how much space is in the room that needs to be heated and cooled by their heating and cooling system. First, I wrote down the formula. Volume equals length times height times, or length times width times height they wrote, but I guess we usually use length times width times depth. And then we'll plug in our numbers. Okay, volume is equal to 15 times 12 times 10. And then we need to multiply these numbers. Because there are 3 numbers to multiply, we don't want to multiply them all at the same time. I don't know how to do that. That's difficult. So I'm just going to break it up first into 15 times 12 and then multiply that product by 10. Now, we've already solved that problem, 15 times 12, and we know that 15 times 12 is 180 feet squared. So I'm going to use that information and then multiply 180 times 10. Okay? Now I'm going to use something we learned previously. When multiplying numbers like 10 and 100, we can just move our decimal one place to the right. When I do that, I have 1,000 or 180. I move my decimal point one spot to the right, plug in a 0, and I have 1,800 feet cubed. And if you notice, I got rid of the decimal point because it lies to the right of my ones place, and there are no decimal numbers, so we don't need to put it in there. Okay? Again, if you feel more comfortable multiplying 180 times 10, hanging the 0 off, and then multiplying, you'll get the same answer. Okay? I have example 3, my answer written down there. It doesn't look like they ask us. It doesn't look like they ask us what the cost of it is, so we're not going to worry about that. Again, this lesson we learned how to use formulas, the 3 major formulas that we will use. Okay, the formula for perimeter, you multiply the width times 2 so that you take care of both sides. You multiply the length times 2, and then you add those two products together. For area, we're multiplying length times width, and for volume, we're multiplying the length times the width times the depth. Okay, so let's say our depth is 2. All right, it's 3 units long, it's 2 units wide, and then it's 2 units deep. All right, hopefully we remember these formulas. Why don't we take the time to write down these formulas on the back of your YouTube sheets. When you're finished with that, you can bring it to me tomorrow. Hope you have a great night. I will see you there.